Welcome to Our Creatures Podcast. This is Chris.
And I'm Angie.
And before we recorded, I told you, hopefully we don't make this too emotional, because today we honor one of the world's most iconic species and the woman who brought them into our lives, the chimpanzee, and the eyes and heart of Jane Goodall. She led us into discovering about the chimpanzee. It was her work, her determination, her enthusiasm, her incredible presence to bring this species to all of our consciousness in the last 50, 60 years. And we have not covered the chimpanzee before because, really quick, Angie and I have been chasing Jane Goodall for a number of years now. And we've been discussing with her team back and forth, trying to get her on the podcast. I think we were really close this last year. But instead, we were very blessed and honored to speak with Bill Wallauer, which, I mean, like, wow, that was an incredible interview.
I could have listened to him. I could have listened to him for forever. His stories,
yes.
His enthusiasm. Yeah.
Yes.
His love for Jane and for all of their work. Mm-hmm.
And we just spoke to him like a month ago, and Jane passed away. And I was in Australia, Angie, when you shared the news with me, and I had tears down my face. And I will not lie, I have had tears many times this past week, thinking about her, looking at the pictures you and I have of with her from, over 10 years ago. And then I watched The Last Words with Jane Goodall on Netflix. Pippa and I on the couch were just bawling. Like, I'm not going to lie. I'm not afraid to say that as a man. Like, she touches my heart. She is my hero. She has been my hero since I was a little boy. And I really hope we do the chimpanzees justice in honor of her today.
Very well said. We probably won't do them justice. And I think one of the reasons I've held out on doing them for so long is because there's Jane and there's her team and there's all those wonderful primatologists around the world that are experts. And Chris and I, we do the hoofs and horns. We're more, herbivore experts. And so, I just didn't think that our voice mattered as much or was as important or loud. And I realized I got that all wrong, because with just what would she want us to do? She would want us to do our best and get people excited about the chimpanzee and wanting to save the chimpanzee and wanting to learn more about it and the species all over the world, and conservation, humanitarianism, science, education. Those were the words she lived by in her message. I mean, she was touring until her very final days. And so if she can do that at the age of 91, I've got goosebumps. I'm going to start crying. If she can do that at the age of at 91, I can try my best to do it and to shine more light across the globe, because Chris and I, we have a global following, and they like our efforts and they like to learn from us. So we're gonna do it today. We're gonna celebrate Jane, her work, and of course all through the chimpanzee. So thank you, Dr. Goodall, and all of her team. We'll be, of course, talking to you today about the Jane Goodall Institute and what they do there. Their work is just incredible, and hopefully by the time you listen to this podcast, or even right now, you'll go over to their website, their social media, and just learn more about what her team has been doing and will continue to do. And Chris and I, we want to keep the torch going. We're going to pass it to you, to our listeners today, to keep it going and to share her message, share a few fun facts that you'll learn today about chimpanzees, because you will learn some things that'll just blow your mind. We all need to do our best. And if chimpanzees maybe aren't your favorite species, I mean, Jane Goodall I listened to an interview the other day for a few years ago where she said her favorite animal was the dog. So
Dogs.
anybody who's been touched by an animal can and relate to this podcast, relate to her. She was all about doing local conservation in your own backyard, in your own area, and just getting involved, and hope. Oh my goodness. And if you haven't yet, you need to get one of her books or watch one of her documentaries. Right here I have two of my favorites. I have The Hope for Animals and the World here, and then a little bit older one, Seeds of Hope. So just worth a reread if you've already read them. Her message was hope, and we're going to go with that today. Because the chimpanzees are in trouble. They've been in trouble for a while. They are still continuing to decline with their population from best counts that we can tell. They are an endangered species. They are our closest relative. They're incredible. I've been very lucky to be very close to chimpanzees, of course, through protected contact. And so I'll tell some of those stories today. So please stick with us, and please send us your messages, either through Instagram or our Facebook group or email. We would love to hear from you, and maybe how Jane Goodall, her work, her team has impacted your life, or how we can better help carry that torch, pass it along. Any ideas for that? We would love to hear from you, because it is going to take a big community. Nobody can fill her shoes. There'll never be another Jane Goodall. But there can be hundreds and thousands of almost Jane Goodalls or people that want to continue her work and her legacy. And that's what she would want for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I had listened to Bill's interview again this week in honor of her, just to feel closer to her again. And I think we said, and you said this, you've always coined this in the podcast, we never know who's going to be the next Jane Goodall. And Bill's like, well, there won't be another Jane Goodall. Yeah, I get that, because the world has changed, but who's the next Dr. Angie Atkin, making a difference in the world, a voice for these animals. And it does take a village. And I know somebody listening to this podcast is going to make a huge difference like her. I just know it in my heart and soul. So you can be in the same conversation with the Jane Goodall and David Attenborough, who is still with us at 99. I mean, incredible. I got another letter from him because I hand wrote him a letter. I'll save that for another podcast. Incredible human beings making a difference. As I grew up, Generation X, now moving forward for the next generation, there's plenty of people out there doing good work. And the chimpanzee, Angie, this is our closest relative in the animal kingdom. 98.8% same DNA. I'll cover a little bit of the differences a little bit later. But they are so much like us. And listening to Jane and over the years talk about chimpanzee behavior and similarities to humans, it's really uncanny. I mean, they're really uncanny.
Yeah. Definitely. And well, that's why I've had so much just bittersweet emotion this week, because I've been watching a lot of videos of chimpanzees and just their behavior and their mannerisms. They're just like us. And it's fun to watch the documentaries of them interacting, mothers and their infants, and sibling rivalry, and the play. Oh my gosh, the play is the best. So we'll talk a lot about their behavior. But when I was a zookeeper, I used to just love going and watching them. I never worked with great apes, and to this day, I do think that I did a disservice to myself. I wish now that I would have been a zookeeper for them, but I always tried to stick to the hooves and the horns and the big herbivores that I love to take care of. But I would still always go over and just watch them when they would be in a new yard, or when they were maybe doing some of their training programs. They would get enrichment when it was snowing, and they'd go play out in the snow. It's just so just wonderful to just sit in awe, because it's almost like mall watching. As a kid, I used to love to go to the mall. I to this day, I still don't like shopping for clothes or really anything unless it's like animal related. But I would love to go sit in the mall and just watch people. I still, this day, I love watching people in like a crowded scene and just seeing the behavior and all of that's the behaviorist in me, of course. But I love watching all great apes interact with each other, and the chimpanzee was definitely one of my favorites. And I'll never forget a quick little story. I was going through a hard time, and I'm sure it was a boy problem. I'll be honest. And one of my dear friends, Jen, she knew about this, and she was a keeper for the great apes. So she said, well, Angie, come on over at your lunch break. We're doing a really fun training seminar or a training demo behind the scenes, and you should just come watch it, because I know watching the great apes always makes you feel so, connected and better and out of your own head, right? We can get in our own head sometimes. And so I went behind scenes, and I was watching the training session, and sure enough, they get juice for their little training reward when they would select something right or do a behavior correctly. And I was just standing there, and the dominant male came up to the screen and just shot the juice, spit it directly into my face, which they'll do that for dom. It's not, I mean, it's a totally normal behavior if they don't know you, because I'm not one of the group. I was a newcomer. And so, but I was so kind of heartbroken and sad that I didn't flinch. I literally just stood like a statue and just took it. And then after that, we were friends. And Jenny was like, Angie, that was perfect. Like, most people react, and that's what he wanted, and you didn't react, and you just stood there. And I was like, well, I guess a broken heart will do that for you sometimes. But then I got to interact with the dominant male, and it was just so awesome. And we were cool after that. And so I'll just never forget. I'll never just forget hanging out and just seeing them and watching them being a part of it. And all my zookeeper friends that have worked with great apes before. My husband, John, he hasn't worked with chimpanzees, but he did work with orangutans. And we talk about that in the podcast that we did a few years ago. But I mean, just their memory and their interactions. I mean, I've had zookeepers tell me that they left for about 10 years and they came back, and the chimps they worked with just acting like they had seen their long lost best friend. I mean, just bringing, of course, the keeper to tears, because they missed the animal and the chimp missed them. And they were doing all these like happy gestures and laughing and all these calls of just like, I'm so excited to see you, just super excited. And you just stop and think about that for a second, that kind of relationship. And that's why I do regret not working with great apes, to have that, to learn about that type of bond a little bit more intimately than my friends just telling me about it. So maybe someday, maybe later in life or something, but definitely hope to see them in the wild. I think that would be probably the best, obviously. But what just an incredible species. And I think that's why I've been so hesitant to want to cover them on the podcast, because I'm like, I don't think I can do them justice. They're just We're going to try. They're just cool. They're that smart. They're that emotional. Their faces and the emotions they show and make with their face are just, I mean, it's just breathtaking. It makes you pause. It makes you stop thinking about yourself for a minute. At least it does for me. It made me stop thinking about my stupid heartbreak or whatever. And it wasn't John. And it wasn't John, for the record, either.
I wanted to clarify that one.
It was not John. No. He was the heart fixer. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, but I think when you talk about the behavior, that's where it gets challenging. And that's what you're tasked with this in the podcast, is because you're my behavior expert that introduced me on how to study behavior, which is interesting, because I was watching Jane, the movie 2017 last night, and her early studies, they were all ethograms. And I'm like, oh, Angie taught me how to do an ethogram, I was the student back then, and you were the professor teaching me how to do animal behavior. So I get it. It is challenging, but there is a lot of interesting facts about chimpanzee. We did cover bonobos a few years ago. So they're close cousins, our close cousin. So talking about that, I mean, describing a chimpanzee, I don't know if you have to do the physical description. I have the sizes, but most everybody knows what a chimpanzee looks like. Look in the mirror.
Yeah,
know?
I mean, basically, yeah. I mean, of course, they have long black hair covering most of their body. They'll have a bare face, and their palms and fingers and their soles and their toes will be more bare. They have really pronounced brow ridge and large ears, prominent lips. Very muscular, with long arms. And of course, the long arms are adapted for climbing, and they do knuckle walk. So that's pretty classic gait that you've probably seen before. And their face is just so expressive. So I think that's really, I don't know, that to me is where I could spend most of the time. So yeah, and they, of course, being our closest relative, they do have hands that are really good for grasping, opposable thumbs and fingers for climbing, tool use. We'll talk a lot about that later on in the podcast. So yeah, and I think their size, maybe you want to dive into that. That might be where people aren't sure how big they are.
Bonobos stand upwards of 4 feet tall, right? When we covered that. So 3.3 to 4 feet tall, which is like 1.2 meters tall. So not super tall. I did not know chimpanzees could be almost 5.5 feet tall or 1.7 meters. That's like you looking them in the eye. Oh, yeah. That's scary to me. Like, I'm 6'5". I'm tall. I'm a tall lad. Almost 2 meters. They're not that much shorter than me. And the males can weigh up to about 150 pounds, which I know is more than you. So they get big. Now, the females are going to be on the shorter side. So maybe, 1 to 1.2 meters tall and weigh up to 110 pounds, the big females. But when we do get to differences with humans, we will talk about their strength and some other things. And then bonobos are just smaller. And then to give you an idea, gorillas can be upwards of 6 feet tall, weigh up to 450 pounds or 200 kilograms.
Yeah, I got
huge.
those big boy silverbacks. Yeah.
Yeah, and really one of the things I want to do one day is go to Rwanda or Uganda and see them in the cloud forest.
Yes, it's actually the fact that you and I haven't gone is a little ridiculous, I think, but it's on the bucket list, that's for sure.
So the bonobos, they're a lighter frame, they're more slender. There is differences in the face because these are two separate species now. We used to not think they were. And it's just when I talk about evolution, it's that river in the Congo River in the Democratic Republic of Congo that separated the chimpanzee and bonobos. So the bonobos, where chimpanzees are omnivores, bonobos are mainly frutivores. And then there's other differences we talked about, and female led. Their bonobos are very docile. They're like hippies of the chimpanzee world, where
they're very peaceful. They're very bonded by their intimate relationships. A lot of grooming, a lot of romantic bonds, if you will.
Yes.
So that you'll have to check that. I'm pretty proud of that episode. We did it a couple years ago, but the bonobo one was a fun one, that's for sure. And I've read several books about them as well. And the researchers studying them are awesome. They're such rock stars. We should actually we need to get some on the podcast.
Yeah. The bonobos are just incredible. Looking at the range, they're in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So that's where the bonobos are. They're not chimpanzees. They're separate species.
Yeah, and they have just a pocket.
Yeah. And they're endangered. And then the chimpanzee's endangered, but a wider range. Where Jane did most of her work in Gombe is in Tanzania, which Angie's been blessed to go.
I have. I've not been to Gombe, obviously, because I haven't seen chimpanzees in the wild. But I got to spend a lot of time there, and it's beautiful, beautiful country, and I need to get back for sure. We need to get back, Chris.
Absolutely, it's on my bucket list, top 5. Probably, hopefully, the next 2-3 years, I can get there.
Yeah, and I spent a lot of time in Tarangire National Park, which is a little bit lesser known, but tons of hoof stock, so it was super fun.
Ngorongoro Crater is like my little special place I want to go to, and in the Serengeti. But Gombe is on the borders of Burundi, Rwanda, so in the more jungle side, where, Angie and the other places are near the Serengeti. So they go there, they go up into Uganda, they go north of the Democratic Republic of Congo. So in the Congo, very deep, deep, deep rainforest over to the western side of Central Africa, so Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, Cameroon. Then you have breaks to where you get to the western chimpanzee, which is in Guinea, Ghana area. And so they are sporadic in Central Africa. Now, the western chimpanzee is the most endangered. They're critically endangered. We've gone through some horrific population decline in the last 25 years, like 80% gone. It's really, yeah. And then the Nigeria Cameroon chimpanzee, that's the rarest and most localized subspecies, very, very fragmented. Yeah. Then in Central Africa, that's the central chimpanzee. You have the most numerous. And then the eastern chimpanzee is the one Jane Goodall studied in Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania. So
yeah,
those are the 4 subspecies.
And supposedly there might be a 5th, but they're still debating it, the southeastern chimpanzee, but it's not officially recognized by the ICUN. But when you look at a map of where the chimpanzees are in the wild, and they do because they span from basically eastern, central, and western Africa, it's a big range with not that many. I mean, population estimates are between 100 and 200,000. Are those the numbers you came up with?
Yeah, max.
And that was like from 2016, I think was the last time the IUCN did their population count. And so when we actually look at these 4 recognized subspecies and a huge landmass and still in different pockets and isolated, it is very troubling from that point of view. And I think if we're talking 4 subspecies and 150,000, that's not a lot.
Not, yeah. Especially it's in a primate species, long generation intervals. That's why like orangutans are so it's so worrying. Now, there's a lot of hope. We will give you hope in this podcast, but we do need to highlight that they're under peril. They really are. And and Jane Goodall showed us the way. You know, in talking about why care today, I really wanted to highlight what she has accomplished and done. Now, in front of me, I have the images that you and I took. I think this was in 2015. So it was 10 years ago as we record this, when she came to the University of Florida and gave her talk. I was very lucky because my friend got me front row seats. I was right there just listening to her, and then we got invited to the meet and greet after. Now, in my photo, she's smiling. In yours, I don't know, not so much.
I think somebody caught her like mid, like getting ready to smile. This is before we had all these fancy smartphones. They were just starting. So I'm sure it was some not very high quality phone that took the photo, but I treasure it. It doesn't matter. I treasure it. It's John and I in there together with Jane, which of course is one of his inspirations as well. So I treasure that. I treasure the talk. So I always read all of her books. I mean, just to be in a room with her, listening to her, behind the scenes with her, shaking her hand, saying, I mean, thank you for everything you do. And that's why to this day, like you're saying, I just love listening to her talk, her interviews, her documentaries, her podcast, just everything. She's just such a wise person and so sincere. And like once again, just the fact that she was still touring and giving heartfelt lectures to tell her final days to make, even if she could just make just a little bit of difference. And I think she made a huge, huge, huge difference. But she was just nonstop. I think she was still touring over 300 days a year, which is just incredible. I can't imagine that at my age. So it was really, really special. And I've been trying to, of course, we've been trying to get her on the podcast, but then I've been wanting to see her again, and it just didn't work out for me to travel to where she hasn't been back to Gainesville. I think she obviously rotates to cities she goes to across the globe. So, but it was a very special moment, and just read one of her books, watch one of her documentaries. I mean, she lights up the room. And she can do that. And she had that glow about her
Yeah.
and that presence that even it comes across on screen. Like when you said you were watching the documentaries, it still hits you just like that, like you are in the room with her. Like you are in the front row and she's literally talking to just you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
very, very special.
watching Jane last night because I knew we were going to record today, it brought back so many memories as a child because she's talking about, all of her different chimpanzees and Flint and Flo and Graybeard. And I just, all these memories as a child came up because I used to just sit in front of the TV and watch those shows all the time, like all the time. Now we watch them on YouTube and other media, but back then it was TV. And when Jane Goodall was on, I was, inches away from the TV screen, just absorbing it all. And so when I had my 1 minute with her and I just looked her in the eye and I said, thank you. And I know she hears that a lot. I said, I know you hear this a lot, but you were my hero growing up, so much so that now I'm a professor at a major university. Now I'm doing research in endangered species. And that's a huge thank you to Angie, because Angie's the one that pushed me in that direction. And I just said, please keep what you're doing. The world needs it. And then I took my photo and she had a big smile on her face. But she, if you don't know a lot about her story, what made Jane spectacular? She was born in 1934, before World War II, and, she passed away at 91. That's a hell of a life. In the 1950s, she met Dr. Louis Leakey. Now, women, and I've seen this, and Angie, and I think, you could speak to your experience growing up, because I'm a little bit older than you. But, I grew up in hippy dippy California where, I had integrated schools, women in the workplace. My mom worked because, single mom. But still, I think women face so many challenges up until the 2000s, and they still do today. Pay equality isn't the same. And I'm sorry if that triggers people. It's just facts. It just is. Women that I've taught at university are brilliant, so hardworking, working 2 to 3 jobs to put themselves through school. I've seen it. Many of them go on to be veterinarians. I've been inspired by many of my grad students who mostly were women. So I think things have changed somewhat to where Jane Goodall was in 1957. She went
Definitely,
to Africa as a secretary, not as a researcher, as a secretary.
It's a good old boys club for sure.
Yes.
For sure. And it still is to a lot of extent. So, but things are starting to change, especially in certain fields of study. No, I can't. The way how she started and where she ended is just an incredible story in itself. And that's why she was born to do this. And she was just brilliant at it. And I think she would give the animals all the credit, right? She would give the chimps, they taught her. She just was the first one to sit back and kind of listen and to not have all the scientific training and they need to do this or fit into this box and we need to check this off. And that was actually a wonderful thing that she didn't have all that scientific training to be hindered or to be self-conscious or to be afraid of what somebody might say. Recorded things and she documented the first tool use, and nobody had seen that before. And then she just became the chimpanzee's biggest fan and advocate, and just really got the word out about their need for conservation and that they're just like us. And look at what they do. Look at their social bonds. Look at how they laugh. Look at how they play. Look at how they mourn. I mean, all of it. So, yeah, she was brilliant. And then not only did she do all that, but then she started all of her conservation efforts, which is huge. Because, not a lot of people have enough time and energy and passion to wear all of those hats. to be out in the field so much and collecting data, and then being such an advocate for the animals and touring and educating and promoting and promoting and promoting and educating. I mean, the amount of books she's had, the amount of documentaries, and then, of course, the Jane Goodall Institute and Roots and Shoots. I mean, just brilliant. Just a brilliant, brilliant woman, career, but very humble. Like, she will never say any of that. She'd probably be annoyed that we're even talking about her. She'd
I know.
She'd be like, talk about chimpanzees, get people to love chimpanzees, you know. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's she faced so much sexism, so I think I want to recognize that, because here I am,
absolutely.
the white male, you know, in 2025. But she overcame all of that. She was a mother, you know, and she had challenges there in raising her son, in continuing her work, fighting for the animals of the world. You know, she has opened our eyes. Animals before Jane Goodall and even David Attenborough at the time. But, you know, with her work in Chimpanzees, we started to see animals in a different light.
Yeah, sentient beings like us with emotion, complex social structures, emotion.
And culture.
And culture. Yes, we'll talk about that when we get to behavior. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So she changed a lot. And then in the last few decades of her life, with working with the UN, Roots and Shoots, working with the young generation, of a new generation of conservationists. That was what she was working towards. In Tanzania, that's where she started, 12 students. In 1991, she had 12 students. Roots and Shoots started. Now there's hundreds of thousands of young people around the world in 100 different countries working to save our ecosystems. You know, and she said, Roots represents young people growing, their understanding, compassion. Shoots symbolizes their actions, reaching out to make the world better. So together, she thought we could break through walls, because this younger generation is going to help propel us into a new age. And we need to really help usher that in. And in her message, like, I'm asking everybody listening, I don't know if you go get a Netflix subscription if you don't. But those final 4 minutes, just, I'm bawling. Pippa's bawling. She's looking in the camera and she's giving you her message of hope and what she hopes her life led to in making the world a better place for all of us. Every individual matters. The people matter. Our animals matter. The environment matters. And there's a lot of hope. And so, famous last words. Dr. Jane Goodall, you know, she showed us the way. We have to have the courage to carry that forward. All of us, every single one of us listening, every single one of us watching, take that message and make the change. She talks about it in her own life. Mm-hmm. She talks about recycling coffee grounds. I'm doing that, you know, it's just little things. And she's like, this is what Angie and I've been doing for 8 years. If enough of us do it, it will make an impact. So an incredible woman. Every time I start thinking about her, tears come to my eyes. She gave me a lot of inspiration, and she still gives me a lot of hope. So, yes. Dr. Jane Goodall, wherever you are, and you talk about that, knowing these are your last words as you recorded that, I know you're happy and know that you've inspired millions of us, that we're going to keep the fight going.
Yeah, we're going to be her roots and her shoots, right? Like, that's why Chris and I are doing this podcast. Chimpanzee, a lot of people don't really understand the plight of the chimpanzee, because unfortunately they often are portrayed in media as funny, like on cards, or maybe like in an old time show or something. Some people used to have them as pets. All of that is just not right and sends a wrong message, especially because they are endangered, and some of the species are critically endangered, and they should not be used in media for props or for giggles or for birthday cards and bananas and all that. Because any of those chimpanzees that are used in media, whether it's for a movie or a birthday card, that are either dressed up or portrayed as human, is exploiting them. And it's sending a really wrong message because, yes, they are. We're gonna talk a lot today how chimpanzees are like humans, but they don't dress up and they don't do that type. They're not one of your family members. Like I said, I don't think many people have them as pets anymore, but that was a thing for a while, which is just really, really a horrible choice, because when you're taking an infant chimpanzee and then raising it with humans, they're not being raised with chimpanzees. And you're maybe, and then if you're putting clothes on it and taking pictures of it or whatever, it's young then. So it's like under 7 years old. And you can do that with them because they're not full grown adults. Think about like a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old human. They're little, you can manipulate them. But what ends up happening, as people learn the hard way, is, well, then the chimpanzees grow up into adults and they get really strong. And a lot of their other behaviors, just like humans, they're friendly, but they're also aggressive and they're strong. And so what ended up happening of all these chimpanzees in show business is, by the time they were 6 or 7, the people or the companies that own them were like, I can't have this anymore. So they ended up in sanctuaries. And this day, there's several sanctuaries that have chimpanzees that were from the media, movies, pets, that kind of industry. And unfortunately, because they were raised with humans, their social abilities with other chimpanzees is very much so lacking. So a lot of these chimpanzees have to live the rest of their life out, could be up to 60 years, oftentimes living by themselves just next to another chimpanzee because they actually can't be housed together. I, for one, and I loved working for the Lincoln Park Zoo because they make a real big stink about this, bless their hearts. Anything in media with chimpanzees, like even memes that you think are funny where they're
Social
dressed
media,
like humans,
no.
Don't do it. Tell your friends not to do it. It is not cool. It is not helping people that don't know about this. It's basically exploiting the animal, and of course, if you consume that sends a message that that media or whoever will do more of that, and we don't want that. It is not good for an animal to not grow up with. They're very, very social creatures, just like us, and we'll talk about that when we get to behavior. And if they are dressed up, or if they are in a movie or a commercial or anything like that, they have been polled to live in isolation, and then it's just downhill after that. So that's my little soapbox stance for the day. So, but it's all just about education, because I would tell that to my friends and they're like, oh, I never thought about that. You're right. There's no way an adult chimpanzee could be dressed up, or even like you can't be in the same room with an adult chimpanzee. Heck no. No way.
No.
It's not safe. Not safe. When I talk about the zoo, this is all protected contact. Yes, they are very dangerous. So, yeah.
Evolution, mammals, primates is the order. So us, the great apes, all the old world monkeys, new world monkeys, lemurs, probably the oldest lineage of primates, and tarsiers. So looking at the family Hominidae, that is where the chimpanzee lives with the great apes. Now, as Angie was saying, excuse me, there could be 6 subspecies. It's because genetics are changing the way we understand a lot of these relationships. Interestingly, with chimpanzees, with fossils, we don't have a lot because they're more tropical regions where bones don't fossilize as well. So genetic studies actually are teasing out a lot of these evolutionary relationships. Yeah. So the gibbons in Hominidae, they're their own separate tree. Then we go to Hominidae. The orangutans branch out. So then you have the subfamily Homininae. Then you get to the tribes. That's where we get another branch. You get hominini, which is Homo
Hominini.
sapien, and then the pan genus, which is bonobos and chimpanzees. And then gorillini goes to the gorilla. So it's all changed in the last, decade plus with genetics. I guess that's the take-home message. But when we look at it, chimpanzees and bonobos and humans very, very closely related in the tree. So where Neanderthal was our closest relative that went extinct, 10,000 years ago or whatever it was, now what's left, our closest relative, is the chimpanzee and bonobo. And that is a reason to care, right? We talk a lot about why care about them. The genus or genre pan is bonobos and chimpanzees, and then chimpanzees are pan troglodytes. That's their scientific name. Our shared story with them, I'm definitely not going through human evolution because take a 5-hour podcast. I was thinking about it. We should just do Homo sapien at some point. We just cover Homo sapien.
I think it'd be a snooze fest, honestly.
Probably. Oh, there's so many other cool species. They don't do
exactly.
us.
We think and talk about ourselves way too much, right? So it
just find human evolution fascinating. But yeah, okay.
It is.
The great ape lineage. We all shared a similar ancestor in Africa 15, 20 million years ago. Then about 12 million years ago, Pongo, the orangutan, they split off, went to Asia. Then 8 to 10 million years ago, gorillas branched off. And then humans and chimpanzees and bonobos, that's where our ancestor goes to where 5 to 7 million years ago. So around 6 million years ago is the estimate when we split, where chimpanzees, bonobos went one way and another tree went the other way, somewhere in Central or East Africa. And this was our earliest hominids, human-like ancestor. Then the chimpanzees kept evolving. Chimpanzees, bonobos split, I think we covered this, 1 to 2 million years ago. But some people think as recent as 800,000 years ago. Okay. And that was the Congo River.
Yeah.
That river widened, depth got deeper where they couldn't. And so the bonobos just evolved this little society,
little peaceful
culture.
Yeah. Love is great.
They do, and lots of love with the bonobos.
Lots of love.
But they thrived. The bonobos thrived, and chimpanzees spread out across other parts of Central Africa. And when we look at Homo sapien, we have missing links in there. We appear around 300,000 years ago, and here it is. Neanderthal died out about 40,000 years ago. And then there's some other lineages that and that's how evolution works. You look at all these other species, even like say elephants, there's all these different versions of things that looked like elephants that eventually died off.
Yeah.
Where today we only have, the forest elephants, the savanna elephants, and now the Asian elephants. So same thing with humans. Neanderthal was an offshoot that didn't survive. Homo sapien is the predominant hominid from that about 300,000 years ago. And then we moved out of Africa about 60 to 70,000 years ago. What I found interesting, this is one thing I want to bring up, Angie, the genetic difference between us and chimpanzee. What is that 1.2% difference? I mean, physically you can see it, right?
Sure, you can see it physically. Yeah. And I think although chimpanzees do have a big brain compared to a lot of other mammals based on body size, I think us humans is bigger. Historically, it was always thought about cognitive abilities, like I know about my death and that kind of stuff. So, and there's definitely differences between the cognition of a chimpanzee and a human. But other than that, and like you said, the phenotypical, like, I am starting to get a little bit of hair in places I shouldn't be, but that's just my middle-age life. But yeah, so yeah, I think, am I missing anything?
No, I mean that's funny. The hair. I'm like a gorilla. I just that's part of our ancestry to keep us warm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some regulatory genes. You're spot on with the brain development. That helped us get with speech, our social behavior. So our brains are bigger, more complex than a chimpanzee. Speech and language genes. So fine motor control. That's why we have so many different languages.
Yeah.
Use different parts of our tongue and mouth and how we speak. Our immune systems differ a little bit, but I did look it up because in Jane, again, last night, there was a polio epidemic, which was just horrifying for the chimpanzees to see them impacted by polio. That did cross over from humans, not her in Gombe, but further south, she said that's where the chimpanzees caught it, and it spread through them. And the vaccine does work, the polio vaccine that they did give it to the chimps to save them. But different disease resistance, and then chimps, their muscle fibers are a lot stronger than us.
We're more. That's a good point. That makes sense.
Yeah, we're more endurance, fine motor control instead of brute strength. They've got brute strength genes. Yeah. So that's where it is. And then when you look at total chromosomes, do you have a guess? How similar or different? Here you go. Here's a question.
I don't know. I would think similar. I always forget how many we have. I know the horse like that.
Yes.
23andMe. So 23 plus 23 is 46 humans.
Okay. Higher.
50.
No, 48. 48.
Oh, 48.
Chromosome 2 for us is the ancestral that fused together in us.
Okay.
So they have 48 or 24 pairs of chromosomes. We have 46 or 23 pairs. So where 23andMe comes in. Yeah. So that's that little difference.
Yeah.
That little difference. Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy.
But with that being said, I mean, they have evolved to survive in this parts of Africa. I mean, the wild stuff out there, on average, they live 33, 40 years.
Yeah.
But Angie, you said up to 60 years under human care because, again, veterinary care. Yeah.
And then one lived up to be in their 70s.
Yeah. Was it Little Mama? I think I had that written down.
I think so. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's close to 70. So, yeah, and we live a little bit longer as humans. Now, what's funny is because I always look up animal speed, they can, for short bursts, run 15 to 18 miles per hour.
Oh, right. No, that's what I'm saying. Like protected contact. If you're working with them, like, no,
They will catch you in a heartbeat.
Oh,
yeah,
and then like
that fast.
They're stronger, faster.
Yeah.
All of the things. Yeah.
Yeah. And really agile. I mean, they can leap up to 3 meters or 10 feet in the trees. They're about 2 times stronger than humans in pulling or lifting because their tendons and their musculature is just so much greater than us.
Well, and they just have these fast twitch fibers, which of course we have too. But like you said, theirs are just more adapted for climbing and swinging, which anybody who climbs are some of my strongest friends. So yeah, you don't have a chance for sure. They're gonna win every time.
They're incredibly strong. I mean, incredibly strong, short explosive power. They can hang by one arm for minutes. But
grip strength too is just incredible.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, they have the opposable thumbs and big toes. Their hands are longer and narrower than ours. Their feet are like hands. They use them like that to climb. Some other facts: 50 facial muscles. You talked about that, like their expressions.
Yeah, and expressions, but then also micro expressions. They are there's a lot of subtlety going on there, like a mother can do to a juvenile that tells a juvenile knock it off. It's just so similar to us. I can raise the one eyebrow, and my kids know that they better listen. For the most part. So yeah, the expressions are incredible. The micro expressions, the eyes. To look at the eyes of a chimpanzee, it's just, like I said, it's like life-changing. It's like looking in the mirror. Yeah, it's incredible.
Well, I can't. Yeah, I'm sprinting through this because I want to get to the behavior, because I know that that could be a full hour. There's so much incredible behavior. So hopefully give us the cliff notes. They do have fingerprints and toe prints.
Yeah.
Unique, like us. What about their bite? How hard compared to us?
I don't want to know. That's definitely why protected contact in the zoo setting. They don't make good pets. They should be out of show business and media, all of that. A lot high, more than me.
Yeah. So humans about 162 psi, pounds per square inch. Chimpanzees not quite 10 times that, but 1,300 psi.
Point proven.
Incredibly strong. Incredibly strong jaws. Yes.
No.
And think about it. When you watch them, they're eating fiber. They're eating all these things. And yeah.
Well, and just a little inside scoop. There's like a little joke in the zookeeping industry where you can always tell if it's a chimp keeper because they're missing a finger. And that's not that bad anymore because the protected contact has gotten so much better, and just in general, how zookeepers interact with them, and it's gotten better. But that was one of the reasons too, because I play piano and guitar, and I'm a little bit klutzy and forgetful, and they're not forgiving if you make a mistake as a zookeeper at all. They're obviously incredibly intelligent. We can get some chimpanzee keepers on here to share some stories if our listeners would like that, because it is so remarkable to work with them every day and know their personalities. But yeah, they're very, very smart, and they have preferences of people they like, people they don't like, situations they like, situations they don't like. And so, yeah, so that was what I remember. I'm remembering back now. That was one of the reasons why I was like, well, and of course, nobody I knew, none of my friends lost a finger. So that, I think that was maybe like some myth from many, many years ago. But I do think it's, you don't ever want to not be careful when you're working with something that's, a species that's probably almost as smart as you are, if not smarter in some ways, shapes, and forms. So,
the zoo industry has changed quite a bit over the years.
Absolutely.
Elephants used to be unprotected contact, and it was
and they killed
dangerous.
Zookeepers. They used to kill more than they do now. If you're a first-time listener to Chris and I's podcast, we, of course, have been doing this for 8 years, and we are very big promoters of zoos that are accredited with the AZA, or if you're in Europe, there's the World Accreditation of Zoos and Aquariums. So there's different governing bodies that make sure modern-day zoos are safe and have high welfare standards for the animals, and a lot of other things. So when I say zoo, that's I'm not talking about Tiger King or these little roadside things you want to stay away from. You don't want to give your money to. But yeah, you want to do your research and make sure that the zoos are accredited and that they are keeping not only the animals safe, but the people that work there that are safe. And that's why we love the AZA, the American Association of Zoos and Aquariums, because it's almost like a gold standard where, if you go to the Jacksonville Zoo or the Lincoln Park San Diego Zoo, you know that they are keeping things as top notch as possible and always improving the welfare for the animals, and keep doing their best to keep the staff safe, and using the latest and greatest research and data to move things forward. Just like conservation and science, we always want to be improving. The more data we get, the more we want to improve things and learn from it.
Let me jump in real quick, Angie, because you're bringing up something important, because we talk about chimpanzees in zoos and people cringe.
I know.
People that don't understand. Jane Goodall worked very closely with accredited zoos. She was here in Hamilton a few years back. Our good friend Jessie told me when she came through to inspect the facility and give it like her thumbs up that yes, this is appropriate for chimpanzees, because they live in a big social group, the zoo here near me.
Yeah.
Their enclosure is massive with lots of enrichment, and they make choice whether they come out or not. things have changed a lot since
It
I was a
really
kid.
has. No, it really has. And I want to applaud you for bringing that up. And if you're curious on this topic, Chris and I have a whole podcast about why zoos matter and the good things that they are doing. Yeah, is there room for improvement? Always. But I really think they're an industry that's trying very hard to do that and to make sure that the animals have the best places to live and are the healthiest and are enriched and living in more modern enclosures that resemble the habitats from where they're from. Like at Lincoln Park Zoo, I loved that they even had like a fishing mound for the termites where they could use sticks to actually get bugs and fruit and other things that they put in this puzzle. So many, of course, for the chimpanzees, they need a lot of puzzle enrichment and social enrichment and choice. A lot of choice. So, but yes, I definitely reach out to us if you have questions, and we can share that that episode on our podcast as well too. Because yes, Jane definitely agreed that it could be done well. Now, I will always say, if I had it my way, I would love to see no zoos and all animals in the wild, living healthy, left alone, not all of these habitat problems and destruction and human wildlife conflict and poaching and all of the things, all of the problems, global climate change, all of that. So that would be my perfect world, to just go see them in the wild. But we don't live in a perfect world. So in the meantime, how do we learn more about chimpanzees? And how do we, ones that were already maybe in captivity from many years ago, how do we keep them safe and enriched and healthy and all of that? So
no, and zoos do so much for conservation. I mean, it just in my head, you were talking Taronga Zoo, when I got a behind the scenes tour there last year, they have half the Great Barrier Reef frozen, all the samples of all the different species, because the reef's dying. And I just got back from Australia, and I'm telling you, the reef's dying. I saw it firsthand. It wasn't great. I did see a lot of green sea turtles, which is good. That's a win. And that's for one of our next podcasts on a marine species. But Taronga Zoos do an incredible work in Sydney for the native species there. Hamilton Zoo is working on preserving native species of New Zealand. So anyways, yeah, very important. I just wanted to make that point because I know Jane Goodall has done a lot of work with the zoos, going and making sure that they're appropriate for the intelligence of the chimpanzee.
Yes, and honestly, about 2 weeks before she passed, 2 or 3 weeks before she passed, she was spending time at the Lincoln Park Zoo in Chicago, my old stomping grounds, and meeting with the director, a friend of mine, and several colleagues, and giving talk to their women's group. And yeah, so she was a big fan of their work. But as a zoo, they do great work for species survival programs, SSPs, and they do a lot. They give a lot of money, and they send a lot of their researchers to work on chimpanzees in the wild and work on saving those ecosystems. So it's a give and it's a give win-win type of relationship.
So earlier we talked about omnivores. So fruit makes up 60 to 70% of their diet: figs, bananas, mangoes, papayas. Leaves and stems, 15 to 20% of their diet. So those roots and shoots that they like to eat. Yeah. Seeds, nuts, insects, 5% of their diet. Meat's only less than 2% of their diet. So even though they're been documented, I've seen it, chimpanzees chasing monkeys, eating meat, it's really not a big part of their diet.
No.
And then they get to honey, and flowers and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Mostly plant-based, but they will get a little animal protein here and there, depending on the season, which is important, depending on what seeds are and fruits are available. And when we think of their ecosystem role too, we have to give a big shout out for chimpanzees as having a pretty big plant-based diet, and all the seeds that they're planting throughout the forest as they move along the area and go to the bathroom, and those seeds through the digestive tract help in the replanting. So they're a big part of the food web where they live.
Now, Angie, have you ever seen chimpanzees hunt? I forgot what movie it was. It was brutal. That's
Yes.
brutal. Yeah.
I have not seen it. But you better believe, the chimpanzees, at Lincoln Park Zoo would hunt, if a rabbit got into their enclosure or a squirrel, because they had indoor and of course these massive yards, and there's fencing all around, but some of these smaller creatures can fit in there. Yeah, they, and a lot of times they didn't actually eat them. It was more probably for, like, I don't know, a game. But no, what is documented in the wild is, of course, this cooperative food sharing of meat from hunts. And this is a really great way to reinforce social bonds. So I'll talk a lot about what those social bonds are when we get to social behavior. But it's just like us humans sharing food with our friends that we like, and choosing to not go out to dinner and not share food with our friends that we don't like. So very, very, very relatable. Um, but the other really fascinating and more recently documented behavior of wild chimpanzees is actually medicinal use of plants in the wild, and that they're just their innate kind of cultural intelligence of how to use plants to make them feel better. And so there's been documentation of chimpanzees swallowing rough leaves to basically help expel intestinal parasites that are bothering them. They'll chew bitter pith from plants. There's one called the Veronia amygdalina. I'm saying that wrong, but that also helps them combat worms. They'll eat ferns that have anti-inflammatory properties. So like us maybe taking a Tylenol or Motrin or something like that. And they've also been observed applying plant juices to some wounds that they have. So, I mean, I don't, I mean, how much more human-like is that, right? And intelligent,
Culture. Yeah.
and then right, and then
Culture.
passing
Yeah.
passing it on to their offspring and to their offspring's offspring. And so that's a really nice transition into basically chimpanzee social behavior, because they live in groups. And depending on which subspecies of chimpanzee you're talking about, uh, their group can range, or their troop, depending on who you ask. But it can range anywhere from 15 individuals to sometimes documented over 100 members.
Hmm.
But a lot of times, individuals will travel and forage in smaller groups during the day if they're one of these larger troops. But wild chimpanzees, they just have an incredible social cognition and bonding and reconciliation. After a fight, they make up, or if the juvenile wasn't listening to its mother. Um, I mentioned cooperative hunting. They form coalitions, and all of this, as everybody know, who has a little social anxiety going to a holiday or a work
Hmm.
party or a new school, everybody can appreciate how sophisticated a chimpanzee, their social cognition must be in order to navigate all of those dynamics and arguably do it well. And it's not always pretty. There are obviously there's I like to talk a little bit more about the affiliative, the friendly behaviors between the mother and the infant or the juvenile. But obviously there's aggression too. The chimpanzees tend to live well. The chimpanzees live in a strictly male dominated hierarchy, which is why when I was a young zookeeper, it was the dominant male that spit on me to basically check me out and kind of stand up to me and see where, what my reaction was. And then he thought I was cool, so everybody was cool with him. And so the strictly male dominated hierarchy of chimpanzees, disputes are generally settled without violence. And the male chimpanzees will actually form complex alliances and coalitions to help basically either maintain their dominance or to keep that going, and to do all of this within a social hierarchy without major aggression. And they do a lot of this through social face cues, body language, and the others in the group can read the room. And that is a skill set. Like I said, if you've ever walked into an empty room and either had to give a speech or introduce yourself in class, to try to figure out, well, what works in this setting or what doesn't. And for me, I'm always trying to tell jokes when I teach, and a lot of them fall flat. And I have to pick up on that really quick and remember not to do that joke or style of joke again with that group. So that is a skill set, and chimpanzees display it time and time again. And technically, they're, for my primatologists out there, the society that they live in is called vision fusion. And so what that means is the group size and composition will change frequently, and they'll break off into smaller groups several times a day. And so a lot of that probably depends on the age group of the individuals, how big the individuals are, where they're living. But you'll see that throughout the day in these groups. And of course, in the chimpanzee society, grooming is a very wonderful social bond activity. And the chimps, I'm sure everybody's seen it, where they will basically look through another one's fur to remove dirt, parasites, and all of that strengthens the bond and this allo-grooming behavior. So you'll see that a lot. And some of it relates to dominance and hierarchy. And then, of course, my favorite is watching either infants and juveniles play. They're very playful animal. I mean, it's literally like looking at my kids. It's very similar when they're little and they're just laughing and rolling around and chasing and peekabooing and just kind of just being silly and having a lot of fun and acting maybe older than they are for a hot second, and then getting put in their place and not listening to their parent, testing the boundaries of how far away they can go, trying new things out, being super, super curious. Which I just love watching that. So
yeah, I just real quick, it's funny you say that, because I mean, I sent you a video this morning before we recorded of Noah. You know, he's all over the place now, and I do see the primate in him. Like, his grip is super strong. So like, if I have my shirt off, he'll grab, you know, any bit of hair I have, or he'll grab my head. And their grip of he's almost one now, but of an infant and a baby is that evolutionary remnant of where they had to hold on.
Yeah.
And that's where chimpanzees have to hold on tight. And
on
gorillas and other primates. So that grip strength, but then you do see the curiosity, you do see the rolling on the ground and the testing the boundaries.
Yeah, the video you sent me, the testing boundaries, as Noah's climbing up the stair, he's like really proud of himself, and then he like looks over to, I don't know if it was you or Pip filming it.
It was me.
To be like,
it was me.
to be like, do you see what I'm doing right now? I'm going to keep doing it. You know, it was really just these expressions and then looking to the parent and wanting kind of that acceptance, or am I not doing something I'm supposed to, and just we are social creatures. And it's a different podcast for a different day about how sometimes I feel like we're getting less social in society, and how I think we actually need more of that. We need more of the coffee dates and getting out and going to a park together. And I love our screens. I mean, that's how I get to interact with Chris, since he's in New Zealand and I'm in Florida. But gosh, it's great when we can actually get together in person, and I can give him a hug and we can just talk, and I can actually see his micro expressions on his face. And we need more of that in our lives. And I just love watching chimpanzee behavior and their social. It just reminds me of myself. It just reminds me of myself, my friends, my family. They get annoyed about similar things that I get annoyed about. So but unlike humans, chimpanzees typically spend a lot of times in trees, and now they will be on the ground as well. So depending on the subspecies, they may spend more time on the ground or actually build their nest on the ground. For the most part, chimpanzees typically spend time arboreal. That's where they like to sleep. They want to avoid predators, and it just is a safer place for them to stay higher up in the trees. And so the nest building behavior is pretty cool. They actually tend to build a new nest every night. And time budgets on chimpanzee behavior in the wild show that they will spend up to an hour or so constructing their nest. They'll intertwine branches. They'll use leaves to create like a stable platform. And they make just this comfy nest, and that's where they'll sleep. And then the next night, they'll usually engage in that ritual and make another one in a different location. However, oftentimes the nest that they built the night before will maybe be used by another member of the group. And so when I was reading that, I started giggling because that's just like my house right now. I'll go to bed. It'll be John and I in our bed, but then Maddox comes in, and then I leave, and then Zach gets scared, and then it's just like, you just never know. It's just wild. But so yeah, just very relatable. But what's interesting about the nest building behavior is chimpanzees do display cultural variation as far as their nesting preference and their styles of how they do it, and also the height and location of what types of trees they like. So they'll pass that down from generation to generation. And when we look at the overall chimpanzee's time budget per se, about 50% of their day is sleeping or resting, right, at nighttime usually. And then about 27.5% of their day is looking for food. About 8% traveling, 4% engaged in social activities of play or grooming, that kind of thing. Very little, like I said, very little aggression, or it's a short burst, just the dominant male to just basically show his dominance, and then it's done. So on average, the wild chimpanzee, once again, depending on where they live, they might travel between 3 and 5 kilometers or 2 to 3 miles per day looking for food. Males will break off into maybe some of these smaller groups and travel further than females, and they might go up to 5 kilometers a day, just depending on what they're looking for. And I just want to highlight here the travel distance for chimpanzees in the wild can depend on food availability and where they live. And I just want to think about for a second too how their complex social structure and their cognition comes together to move the groups to different locations where the trees are fruiting when they're fruiting, and remembering that. Because I can barely remember, like, oh, it's fall here. Let me see. In season, I think I can grow tomatoes right now, and squash and pumpkin. And I've been having a little garden that's not very great, unfortunately. It's getting better. This year, our tomatoes are finally awesome, because we compost our coffee grinds and everything else. And so our soil is pretty awesome. But at any rate, they remember all this stuff. And they know when the fruit is going to be ripe, and they know what time of year to travel to what parts, and they communicate that to each other. And it's just, to me, if I don't have my maps on my phone, I'll drive off the road into the, and I mean, it's just, it's incredible. And so, I don't know. I just, as our closest relative, I think they are gaining on us when it comes to knowing how to get food and collect it, and when to collect it, and how much to eat. They even, like, I was reading, like, seasonally, they even know what time of day to forage because the sugars are higher. Like, so just a little plant science 101 is during photosynthesis, it'll bring up the sugars in the plant. And so if the peak of the sun is around 12 p.m. and then 2, 3, 4, around 4, 5, or 6 are oftentimes the highest sugars in the plant. And that's when, depending what time of the year it is and depending on what plant the chimpanzees are foraging on, they know the types of leaves that have more sugar in it, and they know the time of day to forage to get more good stuff that they need, more nutrients. And as I'm over here, like, eating, Oreos and not stuff with nutrients. Sorry, I'm gonna get a letter from Oreos. I mean, cookies. I'll just say cookies. Stuff with, like, not maybe the best, most nutrients in it. It's just fascinating to me that they have all of that knowledge, and they utilize it on a daily basis. And so I talked a little bit about chimpanzee communication already. They have a lot of body language to show social behavior or aggression. And of course, they communicate vocally. And studies in the wild and, of course, under human care have shown that chimpanzees have a lot of hand signals and then vocalizations like hoots and grunts. They'll drum on a tree trunk. They'll even drum on tree trunks to send a message. And they have calls for long distance. And the barks and grunts and all these kind of hoots, typical noises that a chimpanzee will make, they're not a full language like us humans, like what Chris and I are doing right now, being very descriptive and talking about things. But researchers are starting to piece together the fact, and it just can't be denied, that some of the way chimpanzees use their vocalizations and how they put them together, the vocalizations can demonstrate syntax, which is basically pairing certain calls and vocalizations together to have, I can never say that word. They can have specific meaning, like, are we resting? Are we traveling? Is it time to make the nest? Does this have the most sugar in it? Is this a ripe fruit? That kind of thing. And so the syntax is really being studied more now, especially that we have tools with AI and things like that to really show that they have a lot of more meaning in their communication than we previously thought, of course, which I'm sure Jane Goodall, thought all this and brought this to everybody's attention. But they definitely have not a formal language like we have, of course, but they can express danger. They can express affiliation. Well, they can greet each other. They have specific greeting rituals.
Yes, I would say not yet. Right. Not yet. You say,
good point.
We don't, but not yet. And I've got an interview coming up here in a few weeks with an author that writes about using AI in whales, sperm whales, to learn their language. And that it was a Bill that brought it up. It was one of our interviews that brought it up about using AI to start training it to learn communication with these animals and then use it to where we can communicate with them.
Sure.
So where, 75 years ago when Jane, or 65 years ago, said, oh, chimpanzees are using tools, everybody in the world said that's impossible. Humans are the only tool users. She's like, no, they're using tools, and nobody believed her. And then they came out and filmed it and showed the world. And now what you're saying is poof, blowing your brain. I think that's incredible.
Well,
that's
incredible. And of course, under human care, chimpanzees have a few of them have been trained to use sign language or symbolic communication as well, to somewhat of a limited degree. But oftentimes when scientists are always like, to a limited degree, or the evidence, maybe this, that.
Yes.
But I think sometimes too, it's our own error in like the way that our brain thinks, that we maybe can't think outside the box on how to teach them sign language or how to communicate better with them, if you know what I mean. So I do think the AI might help crack the code when it comes to that, as far as like, well, what is a better way that would work for them? Maybe it's an expression. Maybe it's a different hand signal. So yeah, it is definitely an exciting time.
Exciting.
I think
Yep.
to be a primatologist in general, or an animal behaviorist, a researcher, because I think the sky is the limit. And I think that people's eyes are open thanks to Jane and her team and a lot of her dedication and work to just, let's think about this, and let's re-examine what we think they can do and what we think, us humans think they can't do. Right. Because I'm sorry, like, I can't go eat an orange right now off the tree in my backyard. Does grow successfully. I love that. I can't eat an orange and tell you what time of day is a better time to eat it based on the nutrient profile.
No idea.
Right.
No idea.
So
no idea.
Things like that are just, such a it's an intelligence, but in such a different way, and I just don't want to take them for granted, because they don't necessarily play guitar or something like that, or they can't write poetry at this point, right? Because exactly. With the tool use, chimpanzees have been recorded, of course, using sticks to fish out termites from these huge mounds that, like, I wouldn't even know a termite is in there, right? So there's that. They crack nuts with rocks. We do that all the time. And they even use leaves like as sponges to drink water. So like almost like their own cup. And we've talked about this social learning and this culture. And different groups, depending on where they live or what subspecies they are, have unique traditions and the tool use that they do. And they have unique ways to groom each other. And these foraging techniques of where to forage, when to forage, how to get there, that they pass down to generation and generation. And it's just incredible. And the more of the filming tools we have, and then AI and drones, and maybe just some camera traps and things like that, I think we are able to explore some of this. So it's really exciting. Now, when it gets with cognition, I've been reading several papers just to try to, once again, I'm not a primatologist or a behavior expert, so we need to get one on the podcast. But one of the newer papers I was looking at was basically describing that, of course, chimpanzees can recognize themselves in the mirror. That's like a classic test. That's not shocking. But research has shown that chimpanzees can understand some of the things about what other people, see, there was a slip, about what other chimpanzees want. So they're able to make like predictions about, okay, that chimpanzee is looking like this or acting like this, so they must want X, Y, or Z. And so that's a very human-like trait, to be able to kind of put your shoes into another person. In fact, I might argue that we don't do that enough, but that's a different podcast for a different day. But this understanding is called like social casualty. And it's basically taking the perspective view of another and understanding that another in your group has goals and has their own unique perspective on things. So just chew on that one for a minute, right? That they can look at their family member or their friend in their group and understand that they have their own wants and their needs. Now, with that being said, at this point, research suggests that chimpanzees do have some limits when it comes to this perspective taking. They don't seem to be able to recognize that other chimpanzees can hold false beliefs. So that there are limits to how much of perspective of another chimpanzee they can take. So basically that it means that the chimpanzee doesn't realize that another chimpanzee can believe something that isn't true. Or that like they would maybe be doing something on purpose or falsely misleading them or something like that. So in summary, their theory of mind is not at this point that we can test as quite as advanced as our human theory of mind. But in the same instance, I mean, once again, maybe we just don't know how to test it, right? Like how do you know if the chimpanzee is lying? I don't know. So, but these are things that I think we'll be able to get to in the future with more understanding of their language and of how they think and how they communicate with one another.
Animal behavior, you animal behaviorist, because I definitely label you as one. It's always been part of your repertoire in your
I know,
wheelhouse
but not with primates, but I love reading about it and talking about it.
Yeah. Just imagine trying to design these experiments and like,
well, and that's the limit. Yeah. The limit is our human brain. Like, well, I think this, or I would do it this way. I mean, there's always that running thought about octopus that we don't know how to test them, that if we knew how to test them, or if they had a backbone, they would take over the world. Like, they're that smart. We just don't. They're so smart in a different way than we are that we literally don't know how to test it. So I think there's something to be said with that with chimpanzees as well. But they definitely have a lot of insight, and they're sentient beings, and they care for others. They have very similar feelings to us, for sure, and an understanding that. Complex, and they understand that others have feelings as well and might have a goal. So it's just fascinating.
I mean, they grieve, they love, they just it's just like I said, the behavior could be its own podcast. Reproduction. So very critical. We have a species on the brink of extinction. Some populations critically endangered. What are we faced with out there? Because that is it's like us.
Yes, it is. I mean, so I guess the good news is that chimpanzees, like humans, breed year round. So there's not necessarily a season. Basically, if a female is mature, sexually mature in age, she will have estrus, behavioral estrus. That's where she's showing signs, high estrogen showing signs to the male that she is willing to breed. And that happens about every 36 days, year round. The female will have this estrus, high estrogen, estrus behavior, and that will signal to the male through pheromones and other behavioral signals that she is fertile. And so males will often compete for mating opportunities, but multiple matings with different males is common. So textbook terms, chimpanzees are promiscuous and polygynandrous. So the dominant male will often monopolize females by guarding them, and he tries to basically exclusively maybe keep them away from others in the group, but that doesn't always happen. And so, yeah, I mean, somewhat similar to humans, right? But when a female chimpanzee does become pregnant, the gestation period is about 8 months. And usually a singleton infant is born. Twins happen, but they're really rare. Mm-hmm. And Chris already pointed out that once they're born, they are with their mama, and that mama takes care of them. Not exclusively, but for the most part, exclusively, because they just cling on and they breastfeed. The female will lactate for several years. Weaning can happen anytime from 3 to 6 years, depending on the individuals. And this is once again, of course, in wild chimpanzee behavior. But the offspring are dependent on their mom for several years. That chimpanzee mama, just like this mama talking to you right now, we are heroes. Our infants and juveniles need a lot from us, and we give them a lot because that's how they survive. And unfortunately, infant mortality rate in chimpanzees in the wild it's higher than I would like to see. I think it's in 20-30%, something like that. So the mom chimpanzee really has to protect them, has to keep them safe, show them how to climb, how to build a nest, where to find all the ripe fruit and the termites, how to fish, whatever their cultural behaviors are that they pass from generation to generation. So that's pretty much the mom. She helps maintain the social tie for the offspring and teaches them right from wrong and how to get along. Now, the male chimpanzee does continue to interact with the female that he breeds with. And he does support the offspring in some way from like guarding behaviors and that type of thing. But it's more that classic picture of the infant clinging to the mom's chest while she's traveling up and down trees through the forest. Yes, sometimes trying to get that kid off of her, or that infant or the juvenile off of her, and just wanting them to find a friend to play with.
Yeah. Get away, kid.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could honestly do a whole podcast on play and being a juvenile chimpanzee, because they have a long childhood. I mean, similar to my little rugrats, as far as just how much they play and how much they depend on mom and how much they like to interact with mom. And they also can sometimes inherit like the rank of mom, as far as a young chimpanzee it'll be influenced by how dominant its mother is in a group. So yeah, there's lots of things that they're passing off to their infants and their juveniles. And what'll end up happening a lot of times is the males will actually stay with the group, but the females, once they become mature, which sexual maturity in a female chimpanzee can be around 11 to 13 years of age. Now she'll begin estrus earlier than that. But as far as having a birth, like, so then she goes and finds her own group. The first birth of a female chimpanzee is reported to be around 15 years of age in the wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a huge time investment as far as making sure that she lives that long to produce that offspring, to live a healthy life, to learn all the skills she needs socially, physically, just in general, to make it that, to survive. And so, yeah, it's, they can have, I was reading like 7 or 8, a lot of times is when they actually will start cycling, but just from a society point of view or a rank point of view, they're not bred until they're much older. Now, males, once again, puberty, if you will, happens also like around 7 years of age in the wild. But once again, they oftentimes will not produce offspring until they're 15 as well. Because there's a lot of competition and they have to learn the ropes. And so there's a lot going against them as far as passing off their genetics. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a huge investment. And so that's where, if you think of a chimpanzee that's either poached from the wild or gets maybe a zoonotic disease from humans or something at the age of like 12 or 13, they probably haven't had an offspring. They probably haven't passed their genetics. It's like such a waste. And so when we're thinking of protecting this area for the local subspecies of chimpanzee that lives there in the forests, what we're protecting now, if any births that are happening this year in 2025, it won't be until, help me out, Chris, with the math, add 15 to 25.
Well, no, I mean 2040 plus, but
exactly.
Yeah.
Where then that offspring that this conservation work or whatever's being done right now will potentially pay off. So I think this is why they've had such a hard time with, there's been, of course, a big spotlight on them thanks to Jane and her work and among others. And there are so many people working hard for their conservation of for chimpanzees, but it's not going to be something that happens overnight. And they're up against so much more than just habitat loss, or, I mean, there's just so much that they're up against that we need all hands on deck, and we need it on deck now to see population increasing in the next 15 years, right?
Yeah.
So and this is all depends on their health. So their environmental conditions, their social conditions, and who knows how the fragmenting of populations is impacting their social structure and dynamic and breeding, all of that. So we need to really make sure they have enough of the wild left so they can be wild and we can learn from them. And yeah, I mean,
it's tough. It's tough.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough. It's like the orangutan. I mean, and these animals are so intelligent. They do carry trauma. You can't, especially chimpanzee, you can't argue against that. You can't. We know dogs have trauma. We know horses, other complex organisms carry trauma. So chimpanzees being elephants, that's why when they cull elephants in Africa, they have to cull the whole herd, babies included, because they carry trauma. So yeah, chimpanzees, there is hope. There absolutely is hope. I mean, Jane would not want us to dwell on the bad, but the reality is they have suffered a 50% decline in the last 60 years since she started her work, and thank goodness for her work.
Yeah, it'd be worse without it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like I said, that Western chimpanzee, they've suffered the greatest decline, 80%. So of the 4 subspecies. But yeah, like Angie said, I mean, habitat loss, fragmentation, the bushmeat trade, illegal pet trade. Like, as Angie was talking earlier, I know I'm not even going to mention it, who this person is, but there is somebody always playing with this chimpanzee in trees. It's disgusting. I'm sorry. You should just delete, report that you should not be seen. You absolutely shouldn't. They're not pets.
Because remember, in a couple years, when that chimpanzee becomes a mature adult around the age 7, sexually mature, and testosterone spikes in that male, that person, they're going to have to get a new one. So to keep their social media or whatever they're doing to keep that going, because they can't continue to work with the one that you're seeing today. They can't continue to keep working with that one. Where does that one go? What happens to that one? I don't even want to know. Right?
Yeah, I don't either. I don't either. Yeah. So, anyways, conservation efforts. There's sanctuaries, national parks. There's a lot of action to save the chimpanzee, and I didn't even ask you, but I know you're going to talk about Jane Goodall Institute.
Yeah. Yes, there is lots of hope. That is sure. And they're obviously a very iconic species. They are our closest relative. And so I'm going to, of course, talk about the Jane Goodall Institute today, but there are other groups out there. I know there's the work of Diane Fossey and her group. We get their newsletter as well. I'd like to read about the conservation work they are doing globally. So there's other ones out there that can be supported, but yes, of course, this episode is dedicated to Jane Goodall and her work. The Jane Goodall Institute is a global, so a very big nonprofit dedicated to protecting chimpanzees and their habitats while advancing conservation and empowering the people that they live around to make a positive impact in the planet. And of course, the Jane Goodall Institute was founded by Dr. Jane Goodall. And the organization itself is world-class. It's around the globe, and they are doing groundbreaking research. They support community-led conservation. So Chris talked a lot about that earlier. Several of these programs, like Roots and Shoots Initiative, they help promote the youth, the next generation of environmental leaders and wildlife stewards, to help get people excited about wanting to save the chimpanzee, wanting to save the forest that they live in, and all the other species that inhabit that area, right? So the Jane Goodall Institute, go to www.janegoodall.org. You can find them on any social media. You can also Google Roots and Shoots Initiative to learn more about that work. But there's tons of programs. It could be a whole podcast. And once again, we should get a representative from that group out as well to talk to us, because they have so much stuff going on, cutting edge research. They partnership across the globe, because one thing Chris and I have definitely learned doing this podcast for 8 years is it does take a village. It takes a community of NGOs and governmental agencies and private donors and landholders at local communities to make this thing work. And so working together is very, very important. That's a huge part of the Jane Goodall Institute and what they do. And so, yeah, go give them a like on Facebook or Instagram, and check out janegoodall.org.
Well, this one ran long. I knew it would. And that's okay, because she has inspired me and you our whole lives. And even during this podcast, she's been inspirational over the years. Yeah, Seeds of Hope. I've got my Seeds of Hope right behind me on the video. And I'm just going to leave it with a quote, Angie. And the other one, yes. Hope for animals and their world, Jane Goodall. This is a quote from Dr. Jane Goodall. Only if we understand will we care. Only if we care will we help. Only if we help shall they be saved. Rest in peace,